This is Rod Hornbeck. This is a presentation given to the Bionutrient Rich Crop Production course held at Whitegate Farms in East Lyme, Connecticut on February 19th, 2012. It explores the link between soil micronutrients and human health. I'm a 50-year organic gardener, and I currently tend about 1,500 square feet of raised beds in Lyme, Connecticut. Part of that is under a hoop house in the style of Eliot Coleman. And I'm a graduate of this course. This is a photograph taken in late September of 2011 showing a 7-foot tall eggplant still bearing fruit and in blossom after the fall equinox. This is last year's cabbage crop, which was turned into sauerkraut, and here it is displayed along with other vegetables produced in the garden. That's just to establish my bona fides as an organic gardener. I'm also a physician, and if you go to the National Library of Medicine and enter my name, Rodney Hornbeck, what you'll find is a series of works that I collaborated on related to synthesizing the evidence that's available to us regarding the treatment of a couple of chronic and acute conditions, diabetes and venous thromboembolic disease. It's a process whereby all the evidence is brought together, sifted, sorted, and then recommendations made to the medical community. I've applied the same techniques to examining the evidence that soil health determines human health. The basic proposition of this course is that soil and life in the soil determine the health of plant and animals, and that in turn determines the human health and the health of human communities. So I'm going to review the evidence and present the summary. We'll take a deep dive into some of the evidence, but we're going to end up demonstrating that these 5 assertions are correct. First, that micronutrients in the soil are essential to human health. Second, is that the micronutrient density of food is in decline in the United States and elsewhere. Third, that malnutrition related to this is a serious global problem. Fourth, that agricultural practices are effective in improving the nutrient density of food. And then finally, that these agricultural practices are effective in improving human health. These are the 49 known essential nutrients for sustaining human life, and they range on the left from water and carbohydrates for energy, over on the right hand side the micronutrients and vitamins. Now it's interesting that some of these micronutrients were discovered to be essential for human health only in the last part of the 20th century. Physicians were able to develop techniques to feed intravenously people who had had catastrophic illness or injury to the gastrointestinal tract and were not able to properly absorb food. And so intravenous maintenance total parenteral nutrition systems were developed. And it was found that leaving out any of these microelements from the mix that was infused would cause problems that were reversed by the addition of these elements. The same thing has been demonstrated in feedlot operations in terms of bovine health. So what do micronutrients do? Well, the big ones like amino acids are the building blocks for proteins, and fatty acids are the building blocks of lipids, which form cell membranes throughout the human body. Without these essential amino acids and essential fatty acids, life just can't exist. And vitamins and minerals are essential to the formation or function of key proteins, lipids, and enzyme systems throughout the body. For example, here are 2 critical micronutrients. The first is iron. It sits at the center of the heme molecule, which is at the center of hemoglobin, the protein organic compound mix that carries oxygen to the tissues in all vertebrates. On the right is a very similar molecule, chlorophyll, which allows plants to convert light into stored energy. Zinc is at the center of more than 100 enzymes found throughout the human body. Here's a group of them known as matrix metalloproteinases, and zinc deficiency causes serious problems. Cobalt, a trace element but essential in the human diet. You see, it sits at the center of a very complex organic molecule known as cobalamin, or what we refer to as vitamin B12, essential for the maintenance of healthy brains, spinal cords, and for formation of blood inside the bone marrow. Okay, so that takes us through micronutrients in the soil that are essential to human health. The second is the documentation of the decline of nutrient density in food. And a quick review of the literature indicates that this is a well-established fact. It's been published in this country and in the UK. And there have been substantial declines in nearly all micronutrients, and some foods have lost more than half their nutrient value. For example, copper has declined in some vegetables by more than 80%. So, micronutrient density of food is in decline. That's well established. Malnutrition. There are three types of malnutrition. The first is protein-calorie imbalance. This manifests itself as obesity on the one hand, or starvation on the other. The kids with the thin arms and legs and swollen bellies have severe protein-calorie malnutrition. The second type are vitamin deficiencies, and the third is trace element deficiencies. The impact of malnutrition around the world is staggering. 30 million deaths per year worldwide are directly or indirectly related to malnutrition, and the World Health Organization has firmly established these facts. 30 billion people around the globe are deficient in one or more trace elements. Now, at this juncture, it's important to distinguish between clinical and subclinical malnutrition. A good example of clinical malnutrition is the 18th century sailor who gets off the ship after a long ocean voyage without fruits or vegetables and has scurvy, sometimes a fatal disease that's preventable by the administrations of very small quantities of vitamin C or ascorbic acid. That is a clinical condition corrected by the addition of the missing vitamin. The second type is subclinical malnutrition, and you have to look at populations to discern what's going on there. So a good example is North Koreans are shorter than South Koreans as a result of a relatively poorer diet. Another manifestation of subclinical malnutrition is found in certain parts of the world where selenium is deficient and where cancer rates have been demonstrated to be higher as a direct result. So, malnutrition is a serious global problem, point established. Now we turn our attention to agricultural practices that are effective in improving the nutrient density of food. Do they work? Well, there are 5 approaches. The first is to add supplements to foods. That's not an agricultural practice. The second is to fortify foods, like adding iodine to salt. The third is to diversify diets, and I'll show you in a second why that's so important. The fourth is to enhance micronutrient bioavailability, a particularly important issue when it comes to zinc and iron metabolism. And then finally, biofortification. What do we mean by biofortification? This means that we enhance the micronutrient content of food using plant selection, variety breeding or genetic engineering, soil amendments, mycorrhizal inoculation, seed enrichment, foliar sprays, or by changing our cropping systems to companion and succession planting, demonstrated to enhance the nutrient density of certain foods. Well, why choose biofortification over these other methods? Well, supplements and fortified foods are simply just not available to billions of subsistence farmers around the globe, so it's really not a good option for most people in most situations. The second is it's sustainable. Once systems are set up to biofortify food, they can be sustained over time. The third is that they're redemptive. They bring marginal land or underproducing land back into full productivity. And finally, it avoids the toxic effects of some micronutrients. I don't want to try to figure out what the appropriate dose of an arsenic supplement is. All I need to know is that it's abundant in nature and needs to be included in the diet. There are 4 critical human mineral micronutrients in the world. These are the minerals when they are deficient, and they're often deficient, that cause serious problems for humans and human communities. The first is iron. 30% of the world's population is iron deficient, and women, infants, and children are particularly vulnerable, particularly women of childbearing years who are pregnant, lactating, or menstruating. Iron deficiency affects the outcome of pregnancies, childhood development, cognitive function, and for human communities, a critical fact, work capacity. The cause of iron deficiency is not necessarily deficiency of iron in the soil, but bioavailability. The iron that's there in the soil and in the food is simply not available for absorption, particularly when diets are monotonous. For example, cassava tubers. There's iron in the soil and in the tubers, but there are also the tubers are also rich in inhibitors of iron absorption, phytic acids and polyphenols. And people who have these monotonous diets also have diets that are poor in substances which enhance iron absorption, like meat and ascorbic acid, vitamin C. So bioavailability is the target. So selection of plant varieties that are low in phytic acid or rich in phytase enzymes that have been bred or genetically engineered into the food variety may be the answer to this big problem worldwide. And diversifying the diet has a huge impact. Here's a study from the World Health Organization, and this has been done for the 3 monotonous diets: the cassava tuber-based diets, rice-based diets, and in this instance, a corn-based diet. If you eat nothing but corn tortillas, you're going to have no vitamin A, no vitamin C, and grossly deficient amounts of folic acid, iron, and zinc in your diet. If you add just a carrot to the diet, you solve the problem of vitamin A and nearly solve the problem of iron. If you then add an orange, you solve the problem of vitamin C, but you've decreased the bioavailability of iron. Now, by successively adding a few more foods, you get to G, which is a diet that is completely rich in all 5 critical nutrients and contains corn, carrots, orange, beef, spinach, and black beans. A complete, diversified diet, key to the health of humans and human communities. Zinc deficiency is another interesting topic. Zinc and iron are found in the same crops in the same soils, and zinc is required in more than 100 human enzyme systems. There are well-described and well-defined regional soil zinc deficiencies, and zinc deficiency affects human growth, pregnancy outcome, brain development, cognitive function, and immune system function. The problem is that the zinc is active deep in the tissue, inside these enzymes at the biochemical level, and so assessing zinc status with a blood test doesn't work, and so that hampers research in this area. Zinc biofortification is effective. Certain varieties of rice, wheat, and corn can increase food values up to 10%. Soil amendments increase cassava tuber concentrations of zinc threefold. Foliar sprays are effective in peas. Soil pH changes can affect zinc bioavailability, and lowering crop phytate or introducing phytase genes are effective in improving zinc bioavailability. 1.5 billion people around the world are iodine deficient, and soils are depleted of iodine by glaciation or high levels of rain, and it causes goiter, hypothyroidism, and mental retardation. Iodine biofortification can be effective. Variety selection is important for rice, spinach, and bok choy. And soil amendments do raise the iodine levels of some plants. Iodate is superior to iodide. However, as a practical strategy, iodized salt is very effective and very efficient around the globe. We move on to selenium deficiency. This is perhaps the most interesting mineral we'll discuss today. The world contains regions of soil deficiency and of overabundance. There are parts of the world where crops will not grow because there is too much selenium, and some selenium-tolerant crops like broccoli can be grown on these lands to restore them to productivity, a process known as phytoremediation. Selenium deficiency increases rates of cancer and probably cardiovascular disease, and is associated with juvenile osteoarthropathy, a form of degenerative arthritis in children, and childhood cardiomyopathy. Kaishan County in Heilongjiang Province in China gives its name to a condition that's related directly to selenium deficiency. It's an epidemic cardiomyopathy of children. In the summer, children present to hospital with congestive heart failure, and it's found only in areas of China with selenium deficient soils. But two facts stand out that make a simple explanation of simple selenium deficiency untenable. The first is that there's a seasonal variation in incidence, while there is no seasonal variation in selenium in the soil. And the second is that selenium replacement in patients with the disease doesn't cure the disease. So what's going on here? Well, this is the province in far northern China above the Korean peninsula where this is a problem. A search was made for evidence that various viral pathogens might be a factor or cofactor in this disease. And attention quickly turned to the Coxsackie B virus. This is known as a non-polio enterovirus and is ubiquitous in all human communities. Everyone listening to this has antibodies in their bloodstream to the Coxsackie B virus. Most of us, 90% of us, acquired that immunity simply by being exposed to the Coxsackie B virus, developing antibodies and never getting sick. A few of us develop mild fever and mild rash, and an even smaller number of us developed a serious rash known as hand, foot, and mouth disease, and an even smaller number may have developed heart infections or lung infections, myocarditis or pleurisy. The seasonal summertime variation in incidence of Kaishan disease coincides with the seasonal development of antibodies to the virus. So what's going on here? An experiment is in order. A colony of selenium deficient mice was developed alongside a colony of non-selenium deficient mice. When injected with the Coxsackie B virus, the selenium deficient mice, but not the other mice, developed cardiomyopathy. From the heart muscle of the mouse that died of the cardiomyopathy, a virus was isolated, and it was the Coxsackie B virus, but it wasn't the same virus that was injected. 6 base pair mutations had occurred in the virus, and the conclusion from the experiment was that selenium deficiency allows the Coxsackie virus to mutate in the host to a more virulent strain associated with affinity for heart muscle. And the final proof that selenium is important is that selenium amendments to the soil results in marked reduction in the incidence of Caisson disease where it's prominent. So this is the first demonstration of the synergy between a mineral deficiency and a viral pathogen. It may not be the last. In Finland, public health officials became alarmed by mounting evidence that selenium deficiencies in the soil were going to cause or were causing human problems. And they mandated the addition of selenium to fertilizers used in wheat production, and in short order, levels of selenium in flour and in human blood samples increased. And within a decade, levels of cardiovascular disease and cancer declined. The problem with this observation is it's not a controlled clinical trial. Some people didn't get the selenium-enriched flour and others not. Everybody got it, and a lot of other things were going on. People were discontinuing smoking, they were eating more heart-healthy diets, and so there are multiple variables. And this is common in science. You can't do a clinical trial on this magnitude very easily. I would point out to you that there's never been a clinical trial randomly assigning people to smoke or not smoke, and so we can't prove in that way that smoking causes lung cancer, but we do know from other methods and other means that it does. Selenium levels in the UK and Belgium free fall from 1980 to 1994. Selenium levels across the globe on average are deficient. The average human being on the face of the planet is deficient in selenium. We're fortunate in the US and Canada and Japan and South Australia not to have selenium deficient soils. So a Cochrane collaboration is a way of gathering experts in scientific methodology and subject matter experts on the subject at hand, and sifting and sorting in a rigorous way the evidence that's available. All the evidence, the studies are graded as to quality, and then they're summarized, and a consensus statement is issued about what does the evidence mean. This is the highest level of evidence review that we've developed. Two conclusions from a Cochrane collaboration in 2011. The first is that the epidemiologic evidence proves that there's a higher selenium levels are associated with a lower risk of cancer, and that this effect is more pronounced in men than women. The collaboration also concluded that randomized clinical trials of selenium supplements, that is pills, have overall failed to demonstrate a benefit. Well, what's going on here? How do we explain this? One explanation is that an adequately constructed and designed clinical trial with enough subjects has not yet been performed. That's possible. And the other possibility is that something happens that's different when you add selenium to the soil. It passes through the roots of plants, enters the plants, enters the human food chain directly or indirectly through animals, and has a benefit. That there's a difference between the selenium that's found that passes through the food chain and the selenium that you find on the shelf. As Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine, let medicine be your food. He may be right in regard to selenium. If you're interested in other essential micronutrients, the human and animal data is well summarized at the Linus Pauling Institute at Oregon State University for these trace elements. It's interesting reading. So in summary, we set out to analyze the evidence. So let's see where we are. Micronutrients are essential to human health, proved. The nutrient density of many foods have declined in the U.S. and elsewhere, proved. Nutrient-poor foods, along with other factors, is a cause of disease and death for large numbers of people worldwide. Proved. Nutrient-poor foods, along with other factors, is associated with increased risk of multiple chronic diseases. Proved. Improving soil and agricultural practices results in improved nutrient density of foods. Proved. Improved nutrient density of foods, food variety, and food choices results in improved human health. Proved. Thank you for your time, your interest, and your attention.